A photo dropped in the middle of the night. No caption, no explanation, just one image. Jimin alone in a practice room with an expression that felt off. And ARMY immediately lost it. Not because the photo was shocking, but because there was one small detail in the background that, if you look closely enough, would completely change the way you see this entire Goyang concert preparation. On top of that, there are 2 songs on the Arirang World Tour setlist that have never been performed live in their entire existence, and Jimin is one of the people who wrote them. The question is, ready or not, April 9th is going to be a night no one will forget. And in this video, we are going to break it all down, from the beginning all the way to the details nobody else is talking about. Hey everyone, welcome back. If you're the kind of ARMY who loves deep analysis, not just highlights and viral clips, but genuinely wants to understand what's happening behind the scenes with our boys, then you are exactly in the right place. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications, because content like this will keep coming every time something important happens with BTS. Now, let's get into it. Before we go deeper, we need one big picture first. Arirang World Tour is the BTS concert tour that millions of ARMY around the world have been waiting for, and the grand kickoff is scheduled to take place at Goyang Stadium, South Korea on April 9th. This is not just a regular concert. This is the first time BTS performs as a complete group after each member has finished their mandatory military service. Imagine the energy. Imagine the emotional weight. Imagine how much pressure sits on their shoulders, especially when they have to perform brand new material that no one has ever heard live before. And this is where Jimin steps into the story in a very specific way, because out of the entire track list of BTS's latest album, there are 2 songs that are drawing the most attention. First, They Don't Know About Us, and second, the album's closing track that hasn't been widely discussed. Jimin is credited on both, not just as a performer, but as a songwriter. And those practice photos circulating on Weverse are not just fan service content. There is something much deeper going on. A few days before April 9th, Weverse suddenly exploded. Photos were uploaded, not from an official account, but from sources that are considered fairly reliable within the ARMY community, showing an intense rehearsal session at a studio in Seoul. BTS members were already in full rehearsal mode. Practice outfits, stage formations, blocking coordination, everything was starting to look very real. And out of all the members visible in those sessions, Jimin was the one being talked about the most. Not because he did anything dramatic, but precisely because his movements were so focused and different from usual. People were saying he looked more serious than any rehearsal content that had ever been shared before. Why? Because for the first time in his entire career, he is going to perform a song that he himself wrote in front of hundreds of thousands of people live without a studio filter, without the option to re-record. That is a completely different kind of pressure. When those photos spread, ARMY's reaction was not uniform. Some immediately focused on Jimin's appearance, and yes, we can't pretend that wasn't part of the conversation. But there was a group of ARMY who were paying attention to something else entirely. They were paying attention to his facial expression. In one photo, Jimin was standing alone in the corner of the studio, staring down at the floor, headphones around his neck, a sheet of notes in his hand. And his expression, that was not the face of someone casually running through rehearsal. That was the face of someone reviewing their own creation against the highest possible standard. ARMY, who are familiar with Jimin's creative process, understood immediately. This was Jimin in composer mode, not just performer mode. And those two things are very different.
Now, here's the part that almost nobody talks about. Look closely. Across several of the rehearsal photos that circulated, there is something consistent. Jimin is almost always seen interacting with the sound engineer or the music team more frequently than the other members in the same session. This is not a coincidence. When you are purely a performer, you trust the team to handle the sound. But when you are the songwriter, you carry creative ownership over how that song is supposed to sound. You have a standard in your head that needs to be met, and you cannot sit still if even one element doesn't feel right. This is the exact same pattern that was visible when Jimin was working on his solo album. People who worked with him consistently mentioned how detail-oriented he was about the emotional nuance in the music. And now, he is bringing that same standard to the stage with BTS. There's one more small detail that slipped past most people. In one of the short video clips that circulated, not a photo, but an actual brief video, you can hear Jimin softly humming along to a melody. And if you pay close attention, the lyrics he is humming are not from his usual part. He is memorizing another member's section, meaning he is not just preparing himself, he is preparing the whole song, the way a composer prepares their work for the best possible performance. Let's talk about these two songs more seriously. They Don't Know About Us. The title alone already holds a lot of meaning. This song, thematically, speaks about something understood by those on the inside, but not always visible from the outside. For ARMY, who have followed BTS's journey for a long time, there are layers of interpretation here that run very deep. Is this about BTS's relationship with ARMY that outsiders don't always understand? Is this about the dynamics between the members themselves during difficult times? Or is it more personal, about something that only Jimin and the people closest to him truly know? We don't have a definitive answer yet, but the fact that Jimin chose to write this song and the fact that it will be performed live for the very first time in Goyang gives it an enormous emotional weight. And the album's closing track? A closing track is the final statement. It is the impression you leave in the listener's ears and heart when the music stops. The placement of a song in the closing position is never accidental. It is a deliberate artistic choice. Jimin was part of the creative process behind that song, which means what we are going to hear at Goyang Stadium on April 9th is the closing statement of something Jimin wanted to say. And we don't know what it contains yet, but we will know that night. But wait, because there is one thing even more interesting than everything we have already covered. If you look at the timeline of this rehearsal period, there is a very specific pattern in how Jimin prepares himself for the live debut of a song he wrote. And that pattern was last seen right before he released his first solo album. Back then, people who saw his rehearsal photos said the exact same thing. They looked different, calmer than usual, but precisely because of that, more frightening in the best possible way. Because Jimin's calm before he steps on stage doesn't mean he's relaxed, it means he is fully ready. And what makes this even more striking, there are reports from several insider accounts that are considered fairly credible within the Korean ARMY community, mentioning that Jimin specifically requested additional practice sessions outside the official schedule, exclusively for these two songs. He had no intention of performing his own compositions at anything less than their absolute best.
To truly understand why all of this is so significant, we need to step back for a moment. Jimin and BTS have been together for over a decade, and throughout that long journey, there is a very clear evolution, especially in the way Jimin has defined his role within the group. In BTS's early era, Jimin was known primarily as the main dancer. That was his most visible contribution. His vocal technique was always there, but his identity was very strongly anchored in being a physical performer. Then he started entering the production space, slowly, not all at once, but consistently. And when his first solo album came out, the world saw a new dimension of Jimin as an artist with his own creative voice. Not just an executor, but a creator. Now, in the context of Arirang World Tour, we are watching both worlds collide. Jimin the performer, with thousands of hours on stage, is now also bringing songs that were born from his own mind. And there is one thing that often gets overlooked in conversations about Jimin as a songwriter. He writes with deep personal specificity, not abstractly, not generically. People who read the credits and liner notes of BTS albums will notice the pattern. When Jimin's name appears in the songwriting credits, the track tends to carry a different kind of emotional depth. This is not a biased opinion. It is an observable pattern across his previous body of work. And They Don't Know About Us, the title alone already gives us a clue about just how personal this song is. Picture this moment. April 9th, Goyang Stadium. Tens of thousands of people filling the stands, millions more watching from screens all over the world. The stage lights go down. BTS stands in formation, and then, for the very first time in history, the intro of They Don't Know About Us begins to pour out of the stadium speakers. A song that was born from Jimin's imagination and emotion. A song that until now has only existed as an audio file in the earphones of millions of ARMY, now alive, real, breathing, on a stage. And Jimin is standing there, not just as a performer, but as the person who understands that song from the inside out. Every note, every pause, every tone he chose when he was writing it is now in the same physical space as tens of thousands of people singing it together. That is not just a concert. That is the moment when someone's work meets the world for the very first time, and the person who created it gets to feel it happening in real time. Nothing can fully prepare anyone for a moment like that. And maybe that is exactly why those rehearsal photos of Jimin felt different, why his expression carried more weight than usual, why he asked for extra sessions. Because he knows, that night, a part of himself will be standing on that stage, and he wants that part to be perfect. So let's go back to the question we started with. The rehearsal photos of Jimin that circulated on Weverse, are they just regular fan service content? Now you know the answer. There is nothing regular about this preparation, nothing accidental. Every detail we have seen, his expression, his interaction with the sound team, his dedication towards these two specific songs, all of it is a portrait of someone carrying a responsibility that goes far beyond being a performer. This is Jimin as an artist bringing his work into the world. And on April 9th, whatever happens on the stage at Goyang Stadium, we are all going to witness history. Not just because this is the kickoff of Era World Tour, but because that night, for the very first time, songs that were born from Jimin's mind and heart will come alive in front of the world. Now it's your turn. Which song do you think is going to hit harder when it's performed live? They Don't Know About Us or the closing track? Drop your answer in the comments. I am genuinely curious what you all think. And if you made it all the way here, thank you for staying until the end. That means you are the kind of ARMY that doesn't just enjoy the moment, but actually understands the meaning behind it. Subscribe if you haven't. Leave a like if this video gave you a new perspective. See you in the next one, and we will probably be back after April 9th to break down everything that happened live. Because after watching this, I have a feeling none of us can wait.